"No woman could hit that distance," Instructor Coleman declared, gesturing toward the 2,847-meter target that had humbled every sniper in his 20-year career. Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez stepped to the firing line while the male Marines whispered bets about how badly she'd miss. When her bullet found its mark with surgical precision, Coleman's face went white as he whispered, "That's impossible." What Coleman didn't know was that Maya had been making shots like that since she was 16 years old in the mountains of Colorado. And what the Marines were about to learn was that sometimes the person you underestimate has been hiding skills that could rewrite the record books, if anyone lived to document them. The sun blazed mercilessly over Camp Pendleton's advanced marksmanship facility as Staff Sergeant Maya Rodriguez adjusted her gear bag and walked toward the registration table. At 28, she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place through performance, not politics. But the look she received from the assembled Marines made it clear that not everyone appreciated her presence at the elite sniper qualification course. The facility represented the pinnacle of Marine Corps precision shooting, where only the top 2% of marksmen were invited to attempt qualification for the most demanding sniper role. The course had a 73% failure rate, and in its 15-year history, only 4 women had ever attempted it. None had passed. Master Gunnery Sergeant Coleman stood at the center of the gathering, his weathered face bearing the scars of 2 decades in the Marine Corps sniper community. His reputation was legendary. Over 200 confirmed kills across 3 combat deployments and an unbroken record as the facility's most demanding instructor. When Coleman spoke, even seasoned snipers listened. "Ladies and gentlemen," Coleman announced, his voice carrying the authority of absolute expertise, "welcome to what will either be the most challenging week of your military career or the week you realize you're not cut out for precision shooting." Maya found herself standing near the back of the group, deliberately positioning herself away from the clusters of male Marines who had been exchanging jokes and war stories since dawn. She had learned long ago that the best strategy was to let her shooting speak for itself. Coleman continued his briefing, pointing toward a series of targets positioned at increasingly difficult distances. "This week, you'll be tested at ranges from 800 to 2,847 meters. That final target," he gestured toward a barely visible steel plate shimmering in the heat haze, "has been hit successfully by exactly 7 Marines in this facility's history." The assembled snipers followed his gaze toward the distant target, most squinting to even locate it through the heat distortion. Maya studied it with the same intensity, but her expression remained neutral, revealing nothing. "I want to be absolutely clear," Coleman said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "The 2,847-meter shot is not a requirement for course completion. It's there to humble anyone who thinks they've mastered this profession. Physics, wind conditions, and human limitations make it essentially impossible for consistent accuracy." Sergeant Jake Morrison, a cocky Marine from Texas with an Olympic shooting background, raised his hand. "Sir, what's the record for consecutive hits at that distance?" Coleman's smile was grim. 1. Accomplished by Master Sergeant Davis in 2019. He missed his second attempt by 6 inches. A ripple of nervous laughter moved through the group. Morrison glanced toward Maya, then spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "Sir, is it true we've got a diversity candidate in this course?" The question hung in the air like smoke from a rifle shot. All eyes turned toward Maya, who maintained her professional composure despite the obvious challenge. Coleman's expression darkened at the breach of protocol, but he answered the question directly. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez qualified for this course through the same standards as every other Marine present," he said curtly. "Her scores on preliminary testing were among the highest in the past 2 years. Morrison wasn't finished. "With respect, sir, has any woman ever successfully completed the extreme distance requirements?" Maya felt the weight of every gaze in the group, but she had faced this question countless times throughout her career. Before Coleman could respond, she stepped forward slightly. "Sergeant Morrison," she said, her voice calm and clear, "I'm here to complete the same course requirements as everyone else. If you're concerned about competition, focus on your own shooting." A few Marines exchanged glances, some impressed by her directness, others skeptical of her confidence. Morrison's face flushed red, but he said nothing further. Coleman resumed his briefing, but the tension in the group had shifted. Maya was no longer invisible. She was now a focal point of curiosity, skepticism, and in some cases, hope. The first 3 days of the course progressed with methodical intensity. Marines were tested on everything from basic marksmanship to advanced ballistics calculations, wind reading, and target identification under various conditions. Maya consistently performed in the top tier, but she noticed that her successes were often met with surprised comments rather than simple acknowledgement. "She's actually pretty good," she overheard one Marine telling another after the 1,200-meter qualification. "Probably just gets lucky with the wind," came the reply. Maya had heard variations of these conversations her entire military career. At the shooting ranges near her hometown in Colorado, where she had first learned to handle her grandfather's hunting rifles. During basic training, where drill instructors had initially assumed she was there by mistake. In advanced combat training, where male Marines had bet money on how quickly she would request a transfer to a non-combat role. What none of them knew was that Maya Rodriguez had been shooting since she was 8 years old, taught by a grandfather who had served as a Marine scout sniper in Vietnam. By the time she was 16, she was making shots in the Colorado Rockies that would challenge professional marksmen, hunting elk and deer at distances that required calculations most people never learned. Her grandfather had been patient but demanding, teaching her to read wind patterns by watching grass movement, to calculate bullet drop by understanding the physics of ballistics, and most importantly, to remain calm under pressure, no matter what others expected of her. "Shooting isn't about proving yourself to other people, Misha," he had told her during one of their hunting trips. "It's about understanding your capabilities and using them when it matters." On the 4th day of the course, Coleman announced the Extreme Distance Challenge. 8 Marines had qualified for the attempt, including Morrison and Maya. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and nervous energy. "The target is positioned at 2,847 meters, Coleman explained as the group assembled at the long-range firing line. "Wind conditions are variable, heat distortion is significant, and the margin for error is essentially 0. Each shooter gets 3 attempts. Miss all 3, and you complete the course without the extreme distance qualification." He looked directly at Maya as he continued. "I want to emphasize again that this shot is beyond the normal requirements. It's a test of absolute limits, and there's no shame in not attempting it." Maya understood the subtext. Coleman was giving her an opportunity to bow out gracefully, to avoid the embarrassment of public failure at an impossible distance. It was meant kindly, but it was still an assumption about her limitations. "I'll take my attempts, sir," she said simply. The first 5 Marines attempted their shots with mixed results. 2 managed to strike the target once out of 3 attempts. Morrison, shooting with his custom precision rifle and high-end optics, missed all 3 shots by margins that would have been excellent at shorter distances, but meant complete failure at this range. His frustration was evident as he cleared his weapon. "Conditions are impossible today," he muttered to his spotter, "winds shifting every 30 seconds. When Maya's turn arrived, Coleman stepped closer to her position. "Rodriguez, I need to ask one more time. Are you certain you want to attempt this? There's nothing to prove here." Maya met his gaze directly. "Sir, I didn't come here to prove anything. I came here to complete every aspect of the course." Coleman nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "Your call, Staff Sergeant." Maya moved to the firing line with the same methodical precision she had displayed throughout the week, but as she began her setup, something shifted in her demeanor. The careful restraint she had maintained for 4 days gave way to a focused intensity that was immediately apparent to anyone watching closely. She opened her rifle case to reveal a weapon that looked different from the high-tech systems the other Marines carried. It was a precision-built rifle, but it showed the wear patterns of extensive use rather than the pristine condition of recently purchased equipment. "Is that a custom build?" Coleman asked, his professional curiosity overriding his skepticism. "My grandfather started the modifications," Maya replied, assembling the weapon with fluid efficiency. "I finished them." As she settled into her shooting position, Maya closed her eyes briefly and took a series of controlled breaths. When she opened them again, several Marines noticed that her entire bearing had changed. The cautious professionalism was gone, replaced by absolute confidence. Maya studied the distant target through her scope, but she also watched the grass movement at various distances, noted the way heat distortion affected visibility, and felt the subtle changes in wind pressure against her face. These were skills learned through thousands of hours in mountain conditions where a missed shot meant a hungry family and wasted ammunition they couldn't afford to replace. Her first shot rang out with a clarity that cut through the desert air. 3 seconds later, the sound of the impact echoed back from the distant target. Through his spotting scope, Coleman confirmed what seemed impossible. Hit. Center mass. The Marines behind her exchanged glances of disbelief. One shot at 2,847 meters was remarkable, but it could be attributed to luck. Maya's second shot would determine whether she possessed genuine skill or had simply benefited from favorable conditions. She made minute adjustments to her scope, recalculated for a slight wind shift, and fired again. Another clean hit. The silence behind her was now complete. Morrison stepped forward with his own spotting scope, needing to confirm what he was seeing. "How is that possible?" he asked, more to himself than to anyone else. Maya prepared for her third shot with the same methodical precision, but Coleman interrupted her. "Rodriguez, you've already accomplished something extraordinary. You don't need to risk a third attempt." Maya looked up from her scope. "Sir, you said each shooter gets 3 attempts. I'd like to take mine." Coleman nodded, recognizing the determination in her voice. The third shot was as precise as the first two, striking the target with surgical accuracy. As Maya cleared her weapon and began packing her equipment, Coleman approached her with an expression that mixed amazement with professional respect. "Staff Sergeant, in 20 years of instruction, I've never seen anything like that. Where did you learn to shoot at these distances?" Maya shouldered her rifle case. "Colorado elk hunting, sir. My grandfather taught me that if you're going to take the shot, you need to make it count." Morrison, who had been quiet since Maya's demonstration, finally spoke up. "Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. What you just did, I've been shooting competitively for 10 years, and I couldn't come close to that performance." Maya nodded once, accepting the acknowledgement without ceremony. "Sergeant Morrison, competition shooting and field shooting are different skills. You've got excellent fundamentals. The distance work just takes practice." Over the following hour, as word of Maya's shooting spread through the facility, she found herself surrounded by Marines seeking advice on long-range techniques. Her earlier isolation was replaced by respectful attention from shooters who recognized exceptional skill when they witnessed it. Coleman called her aside as the day's training concluded. "Rodriguez, I need to ask you something. Why didn't you mention your background during the initial briefing? Your qualifications clearly exceed what most Marines bring to this course." Maya considered her response carefully. "Sir, I've learned that it's better to let performance speak for itself. People hear what they want to hear, but they can't argue with results." Coleman nodded slowly, understanding the wisdom in her approach. "I've recommended you for advanced instructor certification. With skills like yours, you should be teaching other Marines." "I appreciate that, sir, but I'd prefer to remain operational." "May I ask why?" Maya looked toward the distant mountains surrounding the base. "Because there are still shots that need to be made, sir, and not all of them are on training ranges." 6 months later, Maya Rodriguez deployed to Afghanistan as part of an elite Marine sniper team. Her official records listed her as qualified for standard sniper operations, but her teammates quickly learned that her capabilities extended far beyond normal parameters. During a critical mission to provide overwatch for a convoy moving through hostile territory, Maya successfully engaged targets at distances that other snipers considered impossible. Her shooting prevented 3 separate ambushes and saved the lives of dozens of Marines. When she returned from deployment, Coleman sought her out personally. "Rodriguez, I've read the after-action reports from your deployment. Your team leader says you made shots that shouldn't have been possible." Maya shrugged, uncomfortable with the attention. "I did my job, sir. Your job was to provide accurate fire at standard engagement distances. What you did went far beyond that." Coleman pulled out a folder marked with classification stamps. "I've been authorized to offer you a position with a specialized unit. They're looking for snipers with exceptional capabilities for operations that require unconventional solutions." Maya studied the folder, but didn't open it immediately. "What kind of operations?" "The kind where missing isn't an option, and the targets are at distances most people consider impossible." She considered the offer carefully. "Will I be working with people who judge performance based on results rather than assumptions?" Coleman smiled. "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, after what I've seen, anyone who judges you based on assumptions is making a serious tactical error." Maya opened the folder and reviewed its contents. The unit specialized in extreme distance precision shooting for high-value targets in complex environments. The mission parameters matched her capabilities perfectly. "When do I start?" she asked. 3 years later, Maya Rodriguez had become a legend within the specialized sniper community. Though her name appeared in no public records, her shooting had prevented terrorist attacks, eliminated high-value targets, and saved countless lives through precision applications of force that others considered impossible. During a brief return to Camp Pendleton for equipment testing, she encountered a new group of Marines attempting the extreme distance qualification. Among them was a young female Marine who reminded Maya of herself 3 years earlier. Coleman, now promoted to Sergeant Major, introduced them during a break in training. "Rodriguez, I'd like you to meet Lance Corporal Williams. She's attempting the 2,847-meter challenge tomorrow." Williams looked nervous but determined. "Ma'am, I've heard stories about your shooting. Some say you hold the facility record for consecutive hits at extreme distance." Maya smiled. "Lance Corporal, the most important thing I can tell you is this. Don't let anyone else's expectations define what you can accomplish. If you've prepared properly and you understand your capabilities, take the shot." The next day, Maya watched from the observation area as Williams successfully hit the extreme distance target on her second attempt. The young Marine's celebration was brief and professional, but Maya could see the satisfaction in her accomplishment. Coleman joined Maya in the observation area. "She reminds me of someone I used to know," he said with a slight smile. "Quiet, professional, and more capable than anyone expected." Maya nodded, watching as Williams received congratulations from her fellow Marines. "The difference is, she won't have to prove herself the same way. Standards are changing." "Thanks to Marines like you," Coleman replied. "You've shown that exceptional capability comes in many forms." As Maya prepared to leave Camp Pendleton and return to her classified assignments, she reflected on the journey that had brought her from the Colorado mountains to the highest levels of military precision shooting. The doubts and challenges she had faced had been real, but they had also made her stronger and more determined. The extreme distance target still stood at 2,847 meters, continuing to humble most Marines who attempted it. But it no longer seemed impossible to the women who followed in Maya's footsteps. She had proven that the only real limitations were the ones people placed on themselves. Walking past the firing line one final time, Maya noticed a small plaque that had been installed near the 2,847-meter shooting position. It read simply, "Excellence recognizes no boundaries. Monsieur Rodriguez, 2021." She hadn't asked for the recognition, and she felt slightly embarrassed by the public acknowledgement. But as she watched a new group of Marines preparing for their extreme distance attempts, she understood that her legacy wasn't really about the shots she had made. It was about the shots that other people would now attempt because she had proven they were possible. Sometimes the most important targets aren't the ones you hit. They're the limitations you destroy by refusing to accept that they exist. Maya Rodriguez had proven that exceptional marksmanship, like courage and determination, recognizes no gender boundaries, and in doing so, she had cleared the path for every Marine who would follow, ensuring that capability rather than assumption would determine who belonged behind the scope of a precision rifle. The Colorado mountains had taught her to shoot, the Marine Corps had taught her to fight, but the greatest lesson she had learned was that sometimes the most important shot you take is the one that proves everyone else wrong about what's possible.